5:30 on the dot. So I think we'll get started, and we do have more chairs if other people show up and we need to add some chairs. So first of all, it's awesome to have so many people here, and I think it's a tribute to the interest in this space and the importance of the space and land to everyone in the community. And it's great to see people from lots of different decades and generations and different ages, so that's awesome. The plan for the evening is to keep it pretty informal, and as I mentioned to Dick Thodal, that we want this to be conversational. So I'm going to go through a few slides and let you know what we've been doing to date, and then I'm going to turn it over to Keith, who is our landscape architect, to walk through some of the concepts that we have. And what I would say about the concepts, and I'm sure Keith will elaborate on this, is that the concepts are pretty preliminary. And I guess that's a good segue into the presentation. So Glenn Andres, I know you're in the audience, and you could probably say a lot more about this picture than I can. You could probably date it and tell us all kinds of interesting things about the history.
Well,
not to put you on the spot, but
well, no, but obviously it's pre-1911.
yeah.
But other than that, and one can see the gully that there was in front of what's now Twilight Hall, that caused real problems for the foundations of the gym when the gym was built.
Mm-hmm. And then this one.
And it's earlier yet.
Yeah. So let me tell you what we've been doing and who I am. I'm Dave Donahue. I work in the President's office, and I have been chairing a small advisory group, and I'm going to ask the folks from the advisory group to raise your hand or somehow attract attention to yourselves. Ted Dunnican, Tom McGinn, our two students, Morgan and Sage, Nancy Malcolm from the town, Chris Robbins, perfectly on cue, Megan Brady, who is not here, and Jen Bleich, who couldn't be here this evening either. So we've been meeting since September-ish, and the first thing that we did was we came up with a set of principles. Those principles were really derived from lots of feedback. I've heard from quite a few people. We've reached out to people, and those principles have been used to create these initial concepts. I'm going to show you the principles. Come on in. Make space. I'll show you those principles in just a second. So in terms of scheduling and what we hope to accomplish tonight, we're into the beginning of an iterative process where we have initial concepts that have been developed by Keith and his team. You'll see how those concepts play off of the principles that have been established. And the process from here is to refine these concepts and add with them and provide more detail and go from preliminary concepts to eventually a final design. The schedule is that, as you know, the gymnasium has already moved and the town offices are in the process of moving. The plans call for the buildings to be raised in June, and then for construction of the park to happen in really August and into September, into the fall. So here are the principles, and I've been accused of coming up with a set of principles that people felt like were I don't know, apple pie and motherhood, or just hard to disagree with. They're pretty. I hope they're not too vanilla, but I think that they're things that I think most of us would probably agree with. They're fairly intuitive. So I'm just going to walk you through. Make use of natural topography. As you know, the land has quite a drop from one end to the other. We've heard from lots of people who want it to be a family-friendly park, that they wanted to have play structures and things in it that would entertain kids. There's lots of things you can do with play structures that are not formal, traditional structures, but rather kind of make use of natural elements. And Keith and his team can tell us more about that. We have talked as a group about all of the parks in town, in part because we want this park to have its own unique character. And we've talked a lot about our parks as really a park system. And while we know it's not within our scope to offer up suggestions or ideas about other parks, we did do a lot of thinking about that, and we'll provide that to Kathleen in the town. We've heard lots of ideas about ways other parks could be used, things that people would like to see happen here that probably won't happen here but could happen someplace else. So we think about it as a park system. We're cognizant of upkeep and maintenance costs and those kinds of things, and so I know that there's some interest in water features, and so out of the gates we've kind of said probably not, but I don't want to dismiss any ideas out of turn. I think that there are some ideas that we'll put on a parking lot that we say, okay, probably not out of the gates or not in the sweet spot of what we're hoping to do, but it could work, okay? So we'll park those. Variety of seating, some of our parks in town, people know there's not as much seating or a variety of types of seating. You can do lots of fun things with seating that can give the park character. We've talked about buffering it from traffic and making it feel inviting. One of the things that I said early on to our advisory group, and have said consistently going back to when we first partnered with the town around this project, is that this should be a place where everyone feels welcome, where the community comes together, where we envision college students would want to come and hang out, and people from town would want to come and hang out, and it's a place where the college and the town come together around lots of different activities, some of which are informal and some of which could be formal and structured. Parking has come up, and people have asked about parking, so I want to kind of preempt the question. We are committed to keeping the parking. That was part of the agreement with the town, so the parking is going to remain right where it is. Consideration to historical markers, and actually this has been a bit of a pet peeve of mine. I think it's really important to honor the history of the location, the history of the buildings that have been there. And so we've talked a lot about historical markers or something that would commemorate the history of the buildings that exist there. We haven't decided exactly what that looks like. We've talked about reusing some of the building materials. There's a beautiful center stone that dates the high school. There's lots of opportunities there, and again, I'm outside my area of expertise, but Keith can talk more about that. By commitment, again, in contract with the town, we agreed that there would be no built structures on the land, and we've also agreed that the park is to be maintained as a public park or a shared park for the next 99 years. So, and then any change in use would have to be by agreement with the town. Okay. Infrastructure in this day and age of electronics and Wi-Fi and all those kinds of things, we at least want to put the infrastructure in at the outset so that the park it's appropriate lit, has Wi-Fi. People have talked about outdoor movies as a possibility in this park, and so we want to make sure that we design the park in a way where it could accommodate those kinds of things. And we've also said that the park should have some flat space, a good sized flat space, so that if we wanted to do things like outdoor concerts and again movies or farmers market, which has been suggested, that we would have the kinds of variety of spaces in this park that would accommodate that. So those are our principles. This is a picture that you'll see up and around the room that Keith and his team put together that kind of shows the evolution of the space as it becomes a green space. In this particular picture, and again, I'm not gonna steal Keith's thunder, but there's sort of outdoor cafe seating across the street from Sama's Cafe to kind of feed off of the energy over in that area where in the summer people get creamies and there's outdoor seating and places to eat. Keith will talk you through some of the other seating ideas for the spaces. And I guess I'll stop there before I pass the baton, the talking baton, to Keith, and just invite questions on our process to date. And again, I've chaired an advisory group. The advisory group started off by doing research on parks and public spaces and what energizes those spaces. There's actually a fair amount of research done where spaces that have not been well used in different areas around the country have then been energized by small changes in activities and things like seating. We started with our research, then through conversation as a group, we all contributed ideas about what we thought would make sense, and then we synthesized those ideas into a set of principles that would guide the initial designs. So that's, I said I'd stay to 10 minutes, so I'm spot on. Questions? So just one more comment about the evening. Our hope is that this is conversational, and you know, we weren't sure how many people would show up, and this is awesome. And we'll give you some feedback and instructions about how we plan to use our stickies and all that jazz. But we really want to hear from you, which is why I pledged that I would stick to around 10 minutes and that I mostly do listening. So thank you all for being here tonight, and I'm going to introduce Keith, and Keith, you can introduce Ted. Yep. And take it from there.
All right, there you go. There's Ted back there. He's with me. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming. I think this is great, and I want to reiterate what Dave said is we've begun to just put some ideas down, interpreting the principles, and what we need now is your input. And we can do this a number of ways. I can walk you through
Natalie,
some
I'm
of
going
the
to get your chair,
schemes.
Natalie.
Get your chair now.
And then, as you have comments, we can write them down on sticky back and we can put them up. Or, if you feel more comfortable, you can write them down on your sticky back and put them on the plans. It may be things you like about the plan. It may be things you hate about the plan. Things you're so-so about the plans. So whatever makes you feel the most comfortable to add information to this dialogue, and I really want to keep it informal. So if as I'm speaking, you know, you have something to say, by all means, say it. This isn't a presentation, a formal presentation, nor is it a lecture. All right? So, I'm going to just jump right in. This is a plan that shows the existing survey over an air photo. We just thought it was an interesting starting point. It was the base that we went from to generate these studies.
Excuse me, could you line them up, please, so we can
Put them up
use
higher,
them?
so-
Is that possible?
Yeah, I'll do that. We just need two, we'll just round this. That one can go right here. So, yeah, if you go back to the principles, it was discussed. The idea that the parking is a given and it will remain. And then the variety of seating spaces. So I'll just sort of imagine you're coming from the Rotary here and coming to the park and the things that you may see and experience. First of all, we wanted to really identify this corner, this little point of the triangle. Maybe extend some of the materials that are being used at the Rotary and making a little apron here. Maybe there's public art. The sidewalk would remain along College. The sidewalk would remain up past the parking and connect to South Main. And then we've relocated this walk right along the curb, so all the parking, you can get right out of the car and get right on the curb, or right onto the sidewalk. And this already exists that way in this location. I know in speaking with the civil engineer, a number of the trees have already been identified to be moved and transplanted and relocated to other parks within the town. So there may be some trees on our plan where we've kept them, and we may inaccurately show them as staying. They may already be moved or being moved. So I apologize about that. We just found out that information. And the idea is, on this scheme, that keeping this this area, sort of the rolling character of the park to date, or the front of the municipal building's the same. More informal gathering space, sit under the shade trees. And then this, really trying to create an accessible route down to a flat area here where there might be informal seating, tables and chairs. And again, it might relate, as Dave mentioned, to creamies and things. Shade trees. And on this scheme, we have a seat wall, a low seat wall that defines, that actually holds the grade up of this sidewalk that comes from South Main down to College Street. So one could sit on that wall. That wall might stick up 24 inches above the sidewalk, and you could sit and look out at the lawn, the play lawn, what we've labeled play lawn. The play lawn itself is about 3% slope, it's basically flat. And then what we've done here is we've pleated the grades in a very, we've pulled those contours close together so it goes relatively flat, and then we pleat it up to this overlook space. Maybe it's a bosque of honey locust trees with, again, another opportunity for public art and informal seating. And that seating, we've been bouncing around ideas sort of in the vein of the play structures, this sort of adventure play for the kids. Maybe they're boulders, maybe they're logs. Some things that can be on this slope that the kids can play on, and maybe they dance up into that grove of trees and becoming a seating opportunity. Along this arcing walkway, we've located more traditional park benches where you could sit and look out to the play lawn. So really trying to take advantage of this sort of energy here in this flat area and letting this be much more calm, where you could actually remove yourself from an event. And the idea is that if there was a outdoor movie or even a concert, you could have people sitting on the lawn. You could set up a stage at the base. Should we propose and integrate event lighting? We should have a power, at least for if there is going to be a band or a movie. So some of those infrastructure things we're already thinking about, but we want to hear from you.
Hey, Keith.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the dimensions of that flat space? Because I think it's misleading when you see it on the map. The size of the flat space.
Yeah. Do you have a scale?
Like 30, wasn't like 30 yards by 30 yards roughly? 30 by 40?
Yeah, it was big. This one's bigger.
Yeah.
Sorry. Do you have a scale?
Yeah. So just the point that one of the things with the advisory group is that when we first looked at this, this flat space is almost the size of the whole gym. So it's a big space. Okay, it's like a 35 yard or 40 yard by, because I think it can be misleading when you see it on the map.
Yeah, it's quite large. Sorry. So yeah, it's 150 feet by, if you take the average, 130 feet. So you're right, 40 yards by. Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you pointed that out.
Are you open for questions?
Absolutely.
Number 2 on your list, Dave, was family friendly, I believe, or words to that effect, right? Make family friendly.
Yep.
My particular reason for being here and asking this question is, why couldn't there not be restroom facilities which would make it indeed very family friendly? Because if you're going to have, particularly now that I've heard about these activities like movies and games and God knows what else, there are going to be lots of little boys and girls who are going to be saying, "Mommy, Daddy, you know my question." Secondly, Dave mentioned to me earlier when we were chatting about it that the city had come into the agreement with the city that there will be no built structures. And my intent had never been, in thinking about this over the past few months, to have a building it was always to go into the hill, because of the topography of that. You've got the swales, and you've got right across from Sama's restaurant, for example, you have the stairs that are going up, and you have that, so there's a hill there. And that you would have these restrooms, which would be handicap accessible, would be, you've got, your plumbing is there, your sewerage, your electricity, and instead of having it heated by oil burners, because you don't have any there, it would be electric heating. It would then, as I mentioned to Dave, you start thinking about maintenance of it and dirtiness and vandalism and TV, do you have to have whatever? And so I said you go on to the internet and you Google public potties, because this is going on all over the world in places that have people coming in. Now, here we have a chili festival. Well, here we have things that you're going to be doing on that park year-round. We have graduation, thousands of people coming in, and they can't all get into the town hall. And the town hall is going to be closed at certain times. And so I think that at the early stages, and we have to think of the monetary and the maintenance and all that, cleaning it. I mean, these are things that are very important and vital to its success. But it seems to me that number two, make family friendly, that is a cause for the town to be thought of as a place, you know, if you're in town in Middlebury, they have a wonderful place where you can go, you can wash your hands, you can do whatever you have to do, and right outside the door there's a couple of benches and little tables where a little junior can sit and wait while you're inside doing your thing. That is my question. Sorry it's so long.
I think it's, that's a good suggestion, and as we discussed earlier, we will throw it into the mix, and it will get our full attention. And as I said to you, I would be interested to sort of see what examples out there exist already, price it out and understand what would be involved and how that would influence the design. So I think it's a good suggestion, and it's in the mix.
Good.
Add it to the list. Keith, questions in the back?
Yes.
I'm wondering if you could consider having that flat space be for skating in the winter time. We've lost outdoor skating in town and free skating.
Yep. So as the proud owner of a backyard rink, I love that idea. And you're not the first person to make it, so duly noted, and consider it in the mix. Bocce courts also came up, if someone's waiting to say bocce courts. We've already got that one too.
What about the tables with the checkerboards on them? Was that?
It wasn't but that kind of, we do have some examples from other parks that have come up, and, you know, tables to sit down and play, particularly backhand, chest, that kind of stuff, so.
Horseshoes.
Horseshoes.
I have a question, Mike. The line along between the flat play space and the parking lots, what are those gray things?
That's plantings, that's bushes that help keep balls from rolling in and just help
Okay.
screening, downplaying the parking.
Okay, because kids could just easily.
Run out there, right.
And just while you're bringing that up, we've talked a fair bit about farmers market and whether this might be a venue that the farmers market could rotate to. And there's been some back and forth discussion in our group about farmers market on grass or farmers market on pavement. And I mean, one of the things we've talked about is whether or not this parking lot backed up in some way would be a good spot to do farmers market and what that might look like. So I think farmers market is certainly something that's on our list of things that we would like to see happen here.
That's an interesting idea, but the more uses you generate there, the more you're going to need parking. So don't use up the parking when you want people to come to an event there. My thought was, while there's seating along that, you know, benches along here, the places where you sit to eat and talk and spend some time are both on the edges where the traffic is going right by, and it seems to me there ought to be a quieter place to have a picnic or you know. It's just, you put it on the edge where it's gonna be noisier, so it seems like there should be eating group places to sit, more internal.
Yeah, good suggestion. Brenda?
Yeah, so I'm wondering if, you know, the question's coming, I'm wondering if you've done anything to sort of improve biking getting into town, because when I'm looking at these pictures, and maybe I'm not understanding well, it looks like it's just normal sized sidewalks. I know it particularly seems to be a problem of cyclists coming down, College Street with cars backing out, and you see college students riding up the wrong way. It seems like it's a great opportunity for, you know, at the very least, widening the sidewalks to make them multi-use and have designated sort of striping for bikes versus people walking, and is that been thought about or taken into consideration?
To be honest with you, the sidewalks along the town right of way and the roads are just standard, right now are standard width. This walkway, this proposed walkway is much wider, but I think these are good points.
So the committee we have talked about biking. I dutifully, you brought it up and I raised it with the group. We don't have a solution right now. I mean, that's the honest answer. We did talk a lot about Franklin Street and uses of Franklin Street. And we have some thoughts that we're going to share with the town that we think might also help energize Academy Park or Stewart's Park. So it's in the mix, but we don't have a ready-made solution at this point. I think you had your hand up, and then we'll go in the back.
I want to build on John Isham's question. This is such a strategic space for both the college and the town. My hope would be that you would revisit the principle about not including any built structures before you move to a final plan. I think that the town and the college need a visitors center. It doesn't have to be a big building, but it would be a welcoming place for both the town and the college that would be in a central location. It could include restrooms. It could include the kind of displays that were once in the Gammiel, the building where the chamber was located.
Paint your house.
The current location of the town's visitor center is not ideal. And we badly need something that can tell about the college and for people who are not necessarily looking for information about admissions, and tell something about all the other things that go on in the town in the way of industry and business opportunities. And I know that at one time there was consideration of a visitor center as part of a town hall complex. I really wish you would take a hard look at this. I know it would mean revising the agreement between the town and the college, and it might even have to go to the voters, but I really think it's such an important need for both the college and the town that it should be revisited.
Good suggestion. I think you did put your finger on the primary challenge with that is that I think it would have to go back to a vote through the town, but.
Well, now that the air is cleared a little bit from everything we talked about 2 years ago, it might be a good time to float this.
Yeah, definitely a different time. I know we had a question in the back.
Yeah, in your introduction, you mentioned honey locust trees, perhaps in that eastern lower corner there.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's any thought to other pollinator-friendly plantings that would provide forage for the pollinators?
Sure. It's open for any idea.
Well, I would suggest American linden, basswood trees, and maybe some nice bushes. I mean, flowers are appreciated by humans too.
And berries for birds as well. The more the better. I mean, there's not a whole lot around downtown.
I'd like to see like a general commitment to native plantings instead of any imported plants. You know, wouldn't want to start the next new invasive problem with some, you know, newfangled great thing they're selling at the tree place. So.
Strong agreement. Let's come down here and here.
Can you talk a little bit more about the ideas that you have for informal play structures already? And then I had a couple of ideas. I don't know if you thought of slides built into hillsides that have less of a footprint and not as much of an eyesore, but are really wonderful. And then also in following along on the plants, the idea of creating plants that kids could actually play in, like bamboo, well, just not native, but like bamboo groves would be one example that that are inviting to children to kind of create spaces. I don't know if you have any native plant ideas for that, but
Maybe not.
No, I think the slide idea integrated. I think, Ted, if you can point to some of those examples of the images, those are precedents that we've pulled up. So the idea that these adventure play structures have dual purpose, right? They can be played upon or they can be sat upon.
One of the ideas, if I jump in for a second, one of the ideas was to do sort of taller grass along this path that would be sort of more of a wispy grass with play structures, like natural play structures dropped in there, which I think create kind of a different kind of adventure feel. Another idea that we looked at from other places is mounding. That kind of creates places for kids to roll. So there's a lot of things in the mix, and those suggestions are really helpful.
and I know you said no water features, but dry stream beds that you can turn water on and off. I came from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and they were like a feature in every playground, and they were just wonderful. And you didn't have to have the water running all the time. So if you could just reconsider the
For
water
just me, we
features.
have an ice rink and a water pump. Anyway, I know
Sorry.
down here we have another.
So, along the lines of kind of looking at natural, species and play structures, I'm most interested in, or one of the things I'm most interested in the park is the aesthetic features and beauty. I feel like that's what draws people to be in a space, to have something that you look at as a focal point and a place where people want to rest and they want to be. So to me, it's really important that the park is unusual from other places that we have in Middlebury. And it sounds like some features of what you have here are different, and I'm seeing some similarities also to the park that's, the green, for instance, where there's some benches and trees, and it's just kind of a shady, pretty, but kind of natural space. And I'd like to see more art. I've talked to you, Dave, emailed you about, I'm really a big proponent of having a fountain. I have a fountain that I found in Lake George Village that's exquisite and is a fountain that's made out of natural rocks as well as native species, and so it really looks like it's growing. It's literally growing in that, and I know there would be more upkeep. So if it's not a fountain, I think we should consider that idea, but if it's not a fountain, something that is a focal point, I think that is really important for people who are walking and who are spending time there. And I think also if people driving towards the college, coming through town, to be able to see something beautiful. If you look at a lot of places that work in America and other places, they're beautiful spaces, like in Boulder, Colorado. People spend a lot of time because they have beautiful landscaping, beautiful art, beautiful species of plants, and I think that really is going to make it unusual for the places we have in Middlebury. I think it's going to really be a nice entryway into the college, and I think it's going to draw people, and I think having that alongside some area where people can play is good, but I don't want it to just be an open space. I really want that beauty.
No, I think you'd find strong agreement in the group
Yeah.
that it not just be an open space.
Yeah.
Up in this area, we've had some conversation about that, but that's a place where public art and different forms of sort of built art, and also where historical markers might be interested. So it's almost like a walking area where you would walk about and take in the art and take in the historical markers. We've also talked about how we don't block the view
Right.
corridor into the park from the point, so that, to your point, you can see sort of this beautiful park unfold.
And if you see something as you're driving, like, whoa, just something that catches your eye, I think it draws people in. I think it has a power that we don't usually recognize. And I do think you should consider the fountain.
One comment you made that I want to bring up about the park with the gazebo. I think, we have fountain park, gazebo park. There's almost, in this sort of, I'm not a landscape architect and I shouldn't pretend to be one, but, there's almost too many trees in that park. It's so shaded that it's dark. And so I didn't realize that's one of the problems to the park until, Keith sort of walked us through that. So I think that's one of the things, that's a way to differentiate this, is to make it a light and airy space, but one that still has different plantings and natural
Texture.
species,
Yeah.
right? I know I have Barbara here, and then Dr. Mr.
I was concerned when you said that the parking, that the buffer between the sidewalk and the parking would disappear, and that the parking would be abut the sidewalk.
Sorry, you thought I said that?
I thought you said that you didn't have to you could open your car door.
Oh, here, I'm sorry, I thought you meant here, okay, here.
No, you're actually, you're right, Barbara.
Yeah.
And we had an interesting conversation
Yeah.
about this in the committee as well.
Go ahead, I'm
It
sorry, I
is-
didn't mean.
No, it's a concern. I mean, I think it doesn't give, it doesn't give a sense of safety. It's not, they've done that on Water Street, where there's no buffer between the sidewalk and the road. It is unlovely, and it doesn't give a sense of security, particularly if this is going to be a family-friendly park. It's just as nice to have that buffer, even though I realize it's another mow, it's more maintenance. But just a thought that having those few feet is nice. You may be trying to get as much space in there as you can, which I get.
No, I think you bring up a good point. To be honest with you, the reason we were doing that is that space typically between a parking space and a sidewalk is never nice. It's always muddy and the lawn doesn't grow there. And then you start getting other things planted there. And you can go to Burlington, downtown Burlington, and see some really bad maneuvers that people have done. So it was purely about that, trying to keep things neat, tidy, and lower maintenance.
Right, again, I just think it comes out too high an expense.
No,
We had the same debate. in the
Yeah.
committee. So I hear you, and
Yeah.
I think we're gonna chew on that some more.
yeah, it's not a.
We went round and
formal
round in our
conclusion.
committee on the same issue.
Would it help just to make the sidewalk wider?
No, it's not a wider, it's a psychological buffer between the road and where children are walking around, they don't spill over. Anyway.
Did you have a clarifying?
My question is related to the maintenance and garbage. Under your agreement with the town, who is responsible for the maintenance, not the mowing of the lawn, as it were, but to see that it is properly supervised and kept up? And how are you going to deal with the garbage, the cans, the various paper people come in? I've seen many a beautiful park ruined by the fact that people hadn't thought about the fact that, people are lazy and they throw things around and they But the best parks have always thought carefully ahead, about that, without a lot of signs saying, be sure to do this or that or the other thing. And I wondered to what extent you thought about the beauty of, if you can call it that, garbage cans, how many there'll be, where they'll be, and who will see that they're emptied and not start to smell in the hot weather, and all that sort of stuff. Who's in charge of all that?
Yeah, so who's in charge is easy. The college is responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the park, and from lawn care to the garbage removal to upkeep of the park. We haven't gotten to the level of detail where we're replacing garbage cans or thinking about garbage cans and what they would look like yet, but it's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah. In the way back, and then Amy, and then up to Victoria?
I have just a couple of questions. Jurisdiction, I mean, if this is the college owns this now.
Correct.
So what's the town's, you have agreements with the town. I'm curious, I have like 3 pieces of this going on. I'm with the farmer's market, and my understanding is we can't be there because we're not a nonprofit, because the college doesn't sponsor for-profit events. That was our understanding. So if that's different, that's an exciting option.
Okay. So that's a great question. I don't know the answer to the question, but I'll find out, and I'll work with our business services person.
Because we're definitely interested.
No one's told that, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, and we had, so.
And I would be
nice to know
disappointed
those
because we think it would be a good place to do that. And you asked about jurisdiction.
Yeah, so the college, that's kind of why, but from who's allowed to use it, who decides who uses the space. And then I was curious in the plan, if the college owns it, why isn't there like a, one of Evan Markowski's Panthers with like a welcome to Middlebury College, like this is the entry to the college now, right? And
so,
an opportunity for
good questions.
advertising.
So the college owns the land, it's privately owned land. We agreed to make it a public park. I think there wasn't a debate or argument about that. I think that it's a natural place where the college and the town meet and should meet. So as far as we're concerned and everything we've said publicly and otherwise is that it will be operated like a public park. I'm sure when it comes to uses, there's some amount of liability and risk management consideration that would be given for certain things, but otherwise, it'll be a park where people can come and go and use it freely.
So it's not going to say welcome to Middlebury College?
It's not going to say that, no.
That's good.
Nope, we don't have that slide. Nope. Amy, you had a question in the back.
I actually have a comment that I had the great pleasure of going to a park called Grounds for Sculpture outside of Trenton, New Jersey, and it has, it's different from this, but in the vein of making this a unique and interesting, inviting place, the sculptures and the fun elicited by this, it's kind of an outdoor art museum. It's a great, I would look at it as a precedent while you're doing your studies. I mean, it was a joy to find your way through this place and get invited in and experience these unique works of art all throughout it. And I think that is, you talk about sculpture, but that would be a great precedent to move in.
Thank you. I'm going to go, Victoria had her hand up and then we'll come to you now.
Thank you. It seems like a lot of people want a lot out of this triangle. And I'm wondering then, why is this not being thought of as part of Storrs Park? Why is this being insulated all by itself? Why not some of these ideas be implemented in Storrs? I mean, it's a huge space, hardly ever used. Play structures or viewing, movie viewing, whatever could happen over there as well. So why cram everything in here when you've got all that space on the other side of the building, and it ought to be planned as one whole?
Yep. So thank you so much for saying that, because I was not wanting to ruin all the great energy around all the different things we want to do in the space by saying, I mean, we talked about that as an advisory group, and we were very cognizant that if we try to be everything to everyone, we won't do anything well. And so we think there's probably 2 or 3 things we can do well in this park before we start to kind of overreach. Your point, and I mentioned earlier that the committee, because we did a lot of research around parks, other places, and we took into consideration the other parks in this community, we have a bunch of thoughts about what we might do in other parks to create more energy. To your point, some parks are utilized episodically. They're utilized heavily for a month, but then they're not really utilized the rest of the year. So we'll share that with the town. With regard to Academy Park, that park has some restricted uses, but I think that we should open up a conversation about what might happen differently there. Because I agree with you. It's a space that isn't highly used. You know, it's sort of a pass-through space, and I think that that's a shame. So I appreciate your suggestion. Natalie has
She
something.
took the question right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
That's the one I was gonna ask too, and there are restrictions for the use are not that bad. That used to be 50 years ago, a town park. Everything went on in there, all kinds of games. Kids were there 24 hours a day, but partly because it was a school, but even after the school left, it was used as a park, but now it has been turned into a no man's land. There's nothing there, and if you're running out of space, I would think, like she says, great place to save some of the things. You can't do it all at once in this and plan in the future to do that.
Yep.
It could be a real mecca all the way around Old Twilight Hall.
Yeah. No, it's a great suggestion. We will need to bring other people into that conversation to make that happen. It's not just our decision, but it's a great suggestion. So I want to go here, there, here, and there.
So just one other quick thing, I imagine the outdoor seating would be seasonal?
Probably, but we talked about drainage and trying to get more season out of our seasonal, right? So you know, no one wants to sit in swampy, right?
But so then, if we're not having that during the cold season, just to have more benches that face both directions, that just really invites people to be there even if they're in their snowsuits.
Yep, yep. And I think there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with seating, like very playful.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, yeah.
Sure. And in the same vein as what Emily just said, you have the comment about no structures in the park. I didn't know if the conversation had with that, excuse the interference in the front here. I don't know.
No, it's all good.
I was just wondering if that went as far as no sheltered area at all, because, you know, with young families in a small town like Middlebury, we're desperate for year-round anything. And just being able to extend sitting under something and listening to the rain, or just making it seasonally friendly as much as we can squeeze out of our outdoor spaces would be really welcome.
Thank you. I think here, and then back.
I have two suggestions. This display up here very graphically shows the topographical problems we've got with this site. Also, you've got to consider you've got two very large cellar holes on this site. Rather than fighting these as problems, why don't we turn them to our advantage? Why not put an underground parking garage on where the high school is and the gym is, and you just take this and put it up on top of it. So now we've got a nice flat vista from the traffic circle looking up toward Twilight Hall. You could have the entrance over on College Street, or put it around on the Academy Drive. I think it could be very easily accommodated there. We could have an exit coming up to the point, coming to the traffic circle, so people could come up there. You could have a handicapped access where the current door to the Municipal Building is, which leads to the President's house, which is right across the street there. Make it very nice. We have parking during the daytime for businesses. We've got parking in the evening for social events. This has been done in a number of cities. I'm very familiar with Alexandria, Virginia, whose town square sits on top of a parking garage. And it has a beautiful fountain there also with trees around it. So, you know, it can work. And I think this would make it much easier and add a few other advantages. One other suggestion I wish you would try to include is the actor transfer point. Is there some place along the Academy parking area there that we could make room for maybe 3 or 4 buses to come under cover so people could get in and out of the buses with the weather and all? So, parking garage, actor transfer point.
I think we were here in the front and then to the back.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that this is a transition between the college and the town. And one thing I see on this is that there's not a lot of attention being paid to the town end of the park. Even though it's like this triangular, skinny, easily overlooked point. There's actually like Otter Creek Bakery is right there and the roundabout. There's tons of stuff going on there. It's like a really good opportunity to have a little bit more of an urban response right in that spot, right? Like hardscaping in a little further, seating, stuff that actually faces town and engages with town a little bit more. Like right now, the lawn's great, but it's totally turning its back on the town by putting everything over there. So just something to consider.
I think that's a good point. I think, just so you know, we weren't looking at, here's the town side and here's the college side. But this is the, and I think, we'll back up to this. I like your ideas. This is where the most drastic grade change occurs. So to do that is going to be walls, retaining walls.
Yeah.
And we've been told of a fixed budget. But I think, as an idea, I love it. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, and I would add, I hear your point. We actually, we put hardscape in for the very reason you said. Initially, there was less hardscape. I think you're correct, we could go further. There's a sculpture feature that we haven't figured out up there to be a focal point, that to kind of give that space some energy and some pizzazz. The other thing that I don't know if Keith mentioned about that space down there, which I hadn't really thought of, is that part of the design of that space is to signify entry to the town, because people coming in from Route 30, which is kind of an important access road into the town, when do you know you're in town? And so that's one of the things, but I appreciate your point.
I love your point.
Here first, and then we can come up with that.
Yeah, you had mentioned garbage cans. If you get to that point and you're looking at them, I would just suggest you look at the feasibility of the solar-powered garbage and recycling receptacles that will compact the garbage automatically. It helps cut down smells, makes it less maintenance involved. You don't have to pick up the trash as often because it's compact. And it could be an educational piece too, with renewable energy.
Thank you. Good suggestion.
Hi. I was thinking, I've always thought that a huge chunk of marble would be a great thing for people coming to town to see. And either like half flattened, I think there's some in Marble Works, as an entrance to the college and to the, just like, here we are. I thought that would be good in the middle of the roundabout, but right there, it's nice. It's a natural thing, it's gorgeous.
Yep.
And it's unique, I think, for towns.
Way back front, and then Irene.
About the kind of lawn space, I think it's been discussed, but I just wanted to point out that there is a huge lawn very close by that is not used. So to make more lawn seems like a funny response to an underused lawn that's larger. So I'd just like to throw that out if they're being considered together. And the other is that I would like to see stormwater runoff considered. A lot of good work is being done with rain gardens. There's a gajillion precedents. And I think it's really important to manage that, especially since there's so much pavement and so much grade change on all sides, that this is the ideal place to deal with that stormwater in a beautiful way.
In fact, we've got, we are talking with the engineers, rain gardens are listed here. I didn't point that out, but how we handle the stormwater you're absolutely correct. And it's on our radar, and how we integrate it and make it educational, functional, and beautiful.
One of the things that we talked about as an advisory group, and a couple of people have touched on ideas that start to get at this, is it would be great if the park were a destination, particularly for educational reasons, between historical markers, play structures, and natural habitat. You could make a pretty compelling case for schools to take a 2-hour afternoon trip. So point about the flat lawn duly noted. Understood. In front.
What's going to happen to all the brick in the municipal building and the gym? Is any of it reusable?
I'm going to turn to Tom again, and not reusable, but probably not so much for this project, but it will get recycled. You want to say more, Tom?
The brick is difficult to reuse, okay?
there's a tremendous expense in recycling brick, in cleaning the brick and sorting the brick and taking the brick down one by one. You have face brick, and behind it you have non-face brick. And it all gets commingled when you take it down, you know? Will the brick be reused in this park?
No.
Maybe some pieces of it. Will it be recycled? Certainly. Typically, it gets taken and crushed and used as road aggregate or a gravel aggregate, you know? The principle behind demolition of buildings is salvage rights belong to the demolition contractor. There's value in it to him. So columns and bricks and doorways and windows and steel and metal, it all has value. But does it have value to us in the park? We have to think and talk about that.
Well, it wasn't so much the park, it's just some of it's very beautiful brick. And it would be a pity if there were any possibility of it being reused somewhere instead of just turning it into aggregate.
Yeah, there are also some other stones there are other features of the building that are certainly worth us evaluating and seeing if there's a way to reuse them in the park some way, shape, or form.
The marble certainly has value as park feature, bench, wall, etc., and might be worth the salvage value.
Yep. Yep. In there's a beautiful stone too.
But even all the sills, and there's a lot of marble.
It was suggested that we keep the arch, and that's a pretty overwhelming prospect in terms of what it takes to solidify that and weather guard it and all those kinds of things. So, I mean, there have been lots of ideas in that vein. In the back again?
Yeah, when it comes to recycling the demolition debris, a lot depends on the contractor you hire and their ability. The town has hired contractors to take down buildings, and because they're taking them down with a backhoe, there's hardly anything that gets really recycled that could have been recycled. So with luck, you'll pick someone who really focuses on that, as opposed to someone who's just trying to get a job and get it done quick.
Yep. Oh, wait, Irene? I'm sorry.
I think Irene was first.
Irene was queued up. Sorry to cut you off, Martha, but Irene's been waiting patiently.
That's all right. I want to add a perspective on mention of the actor transfer site along Academy Street. A significant amount of the actor traffic goes north and south. To put it here would bring all the bus traffic through town or across the Cross Street Bridge. So I think that's a significant consideration. The destination is only 2 buses that go to campus and the hospital.
Yep. Thank you. I want to also mention there are 2 folks here who represent the high school Alumni Association, right? So we've had conversations about this as the old high school and how we might honor that history and recognize the building that has been there. We are also in the process of initiating a video project that our communications department is going to do, where the plan is to film some of the interior of the building and talk to some alumni and have a piece that will kind of preserve members of that building and people who went to high school there. So, Martha.
I have two points, and one I hadn't thought of until this gentleman mentioned the parking garage. I believe there's an entrance to the municipal building where the police department used to be on ground level.
Yep, down by the garage side.
So again, because I know how to hammer a nail, and that's as far as I get in construction. Could not public restrooms be put in there and then the park be built right over the top of them? So they would be like underground, but flat, level, accessible. And my second question was, you've been talking about historic markers, plural. So I was wondering, other than what Bill and I have talked to you about for the high school, what other markers, what other historic, what else has ever been there?
Tom, the gym is a
WPA
building.
Oh, okay.
And we think
two in Vermont?
that's worthy of recognition as well.
Okay. Is there a way to keep, because I was noticing the cornerstone as I was walking up tonight for the gym, which is on 1939. Is there a way to keep those cornerstones?
Yeah, the cornerstone is definitely one of the pieces of, one of the stones, one of the pieces we have our eye on.
Yeah.
Above the arch also, I think, is the piece of marble, 1907, right, correct. So
Yeah.
that's one that we have our eyes on as well. Glenn?
The cornerstone is actually a time capsule. And inside it is the history of the schools in Middlebury, up to the time that that building was built.
Is the one on the gym?
Yes. And so that's something that we really should try to conserve in some way. Or it should go to the Sheldon Museum, but it is a time capsule. You have several urbane kind of spaces, your hardscape spaces, you know, that are kind of an interface between the town and the park. As a person who every year has a problem finding places in this town to post posters for events, I'm wondering if it wouldn't be possible to have a posting kiosk that would animate one of these spaces. I think of what wonderful street architecture we find in Paris with posting kiosks that actually work like works of art. They're street architecture. But I think it would help animate these particular urbane spaces in the park. If there could be something like that that would draw people, there would be community notices and other things like that.
Yeah, great idea. Yeah. In the back?
My grandkids are 7 and 9, and I have to tell you what I promised I would tell you their ideas.
Okay, have at it.
They couldn't come.
Get it on camera, we can prove it.
Okay. One is the skating rink. Another one was a basketball hoop. Another one is one fenced area for toddlers. And another one was a footbridge. There was discussion about the footbridge going to Baba's or going to the roundabout and then across the town hall. But those are the ideas.
We'll pass along our thanks to them. So it's 6:30. I hope people want to stay. I just want to give people who only plan to be here an hour. If people need to get up, please feel free to get up and go. And we will stay for as long as people want to stay, and we will take questions and spend more time with the diagrams as well if you're interested.
And will you announce follow-ups so that we know for those of us that leave what's next?
Sure. So the question is about follow-up and timetable. So we're planning to have somewhere between 2 and 3 of these sessions. We were basing that partly on how many people came. So there's clearly a lot of interest. We want to do one on campus and try to target students and get more students. And Morgan and Sage are going to help run that one. So I think the first decision will be, do we need to do another session like this one to make sure that the community has had an opportunity to kind of engage the conversation. After that, our advisory group will sit down with Keith and Ted and talk about the viability of some of the ideas that have been discussed. Some, I think, might be low-hanging fruit. I think there might be some ideas that are pretty easy to incorporate. And then I think one of the challenges that we're going to have is the competition of lots of really good ideas that we can't possibly do all of. And so I think our advisory group is we're going to work with Keith, and Keith and Ted are going to earn every penny as we iterate on the design to try to get to a final design that hits as many of these ideas as possible. And then at some point we'll display that to the community, probably through a newspaper article. This project, and Ted, I'm looking at you, and Kathleen, this project will go through a public review process in town, right? So there'll be another opportunity for the public to weigh in on that design that we present for approval in town. Again, the timetable for us is to iterate on this design through into about May or June, and then in June the buildings are raised and construction would start in August, September. Is that right, Tom?
That's the hope.
Yeah.